Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. Today we're going to be talking about going native or being lost in China. And what does that mean? Well, being lost in China means that you're more familiar with the way of China than you are with your own country. You feel more at home in China than you do in your own country. Going back to your own country after living here for a number of years is scary. It gives you a sick feeling in your stomach, knowing that chances are you're not going to fit in. You're going to be different than when you left. What are you going to eat? How are you going to socialize with people? If you've been here as long as I have, you've lost touch with pretty well all of your friends and family, and people change over time, and so that's a scary thing, going back and trying to reintegrate into your own world, and deep down you're thinking that your own world is China. I feel more at home in China than I do in Canada. I have for a number of years now. And I have gone back to Canada. I have spent a little bit of time there, and very little bit of time there, because after being there a month or two, I'm feeling edgy and I want to go back to China. We spent some time in Arizona. Because we'd been in China for so long, we really didn't fit in there either. My wife being Chinese and me being a white Canadian, it's a weird mix, and people look at you a little strange in the Western world, and they do here too. Being a Westerner in China affords me some more of the luxuries, and people want to take you out for supper. People want to be around you. People want to check out their English with you. They're curious. They want to know what you think. What's your views on all of these different little things? Okay, well, that's part of being native in China, is being able to put up with the people approaching you on a regular basis. Things like jumping on your e-bike in the morning and going out. The traffic is just chaotic, but you learn to drive in it. And then when you go back to Canada, you take some of that with you, and you really have to brush it off because you're going to get a ticket. The horn honking and the bike sirens going off, you get so used to it that when you go back to Canada, it's so quiet that your ears ring. Like literally your ears ring. Both my wife and I have noticed this. Being able to go out for supper to all you can eat and all you can drink buffets and barbecues and hot pot places and Korean barbecues, all for like $12 Canadian, and you can sit there all night and eat, and drink and whatever. Yeah. See, in the Western world, things are so damn expensive that to leave China and go back there for what I pay 100 RMB for here for an evening with my wife and I, it would cost me 500 RMB or $100 Canadian if I could get it for that price. Things like this make China so much easier to live in, so you take it, you hold on to it, and you don't want to let it go. As I say, I've been here for going on 15 years now. Be 15 years in August. And I find that I don't think I can fit back into Canada, especially not full time. Part of me is in China, and part of me will always be in China. Going native in China, well, yeah, it's part of living here for a long time, I guess. Part of getting lost in China is, it doesn't matter where you are in China. I spend a lot of time in smaller communities like Bobai and Yulin, and I feel just as at home in those small communities and spending a week or two there than I do at my home here in Nanning. So once you're sort of native in China, it really doesn't matter whether you're in a hotel room in Sanya or a relative's place in Bobai or a friend's place in Yulin or your own place in Nanning. You feel just as comfortable anywhere you are. And the food. Now we gotta get roast beef. I suppose it'd be good for one night, but eating a hot pot or chewing on a chicken foot, chewing on a duck foot, eating barbecued duck heads to, I don't know, all different kinds of stir fries. If there's not a bowl of rice at every meal, you sort of think, well, where's my bowl of rice? It's the way it is. In the Western world, yeah, potatoes every once in a while, but it's not rice at every meal. It's not stir-fried vegetables at every meal, stir-fried meat at every meal. And it sort of grows on you where, no barbecue duck. Well, what am I going to eat on a Tuesday evening if there's no barbecue duck? Boiled chicken rather than baked chicken? Well, yeah, boiled chicken is pretty good when you got the dip. Well, what dip? Well, it's just it. In Canada, you don't dip your chicken. Here, you dip your chicken. So you gain a palate for the Chinese cuisine, and not your regular Chinese Canadian restaurant cuisine. It's different. It's real China food. Like, I know when my wife goes back to Canada, she says, well, there's nothing to eat here. And I'm thinking, oh, good, she's going to lose weight. Don't let her tell her I said that. But, the thing is that you do get so caught up in the Chinese world that you don't miss the Western food. You don't miss the Western way of life. You don't miss the English language. You don't miss the expensive restaurants. You don't miss... I don't miss driving a vehicle. I don't have a vehicle here anymore. I did have one, but I find that the public transportation is so easy and inexpensive that it just makes no sense. So getting lost in China is being able to walk around with a camera in your face. People leave you alone and you do your own thing. It's walking through a rice paddy, up a mountain to sweep off a relative's grave in April. There's so many different things that we do here in China that people don't know about in the Western world, and I find it normal now that I've been here for so many years. It's one of those things that for a new person coming out of the West, coming to teach here or to visit or whatever reason they're in China, if they're only here for 6 months a year, they don't even get a hint of going native in China, where after you've been here as long as I have, well, I'm about as native in China as you're gonna get, because it's one of those things that this is my home. I like it here. This is an amazing country, and it has amazing people in it. When I initially came to China in 2003, I had no idea what I was in for, and as the years went on, I started to realize that there's more to the world than just the Western ideals and way of thinking. The Western foods, the Western everything. And I started to see that in China, they don't have those views, just for the fact that they were locked behind the Cultural Revolution for 60 years. They didn't have any dealings with the Western world. People were kept sort of in the dark about how the Western world worked. So the society grew up differently here, and it's interesting, but once you get caught up in it, there's no going back. You're never satisfied with just living in, Nanaimo is a beautiful place. The air is clean, the weather is really good, the fishing is excellent, crabbing is excellent. But there's no hustle and bustle. There's no honking of horns. There's no bike sirens going off. There's no nightclub life to speak of like they have in China. There's no dancing in the parks of old people. There's no sword fighting in the parks and Tai Chi and stuff like that you come to just expect in China as you're walking down the street. Ballroom dancing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the park, to people at 8 o'clock in the morning playing badminton in the park, to walking Nanhu Lake, it really doesn't matter. It's all of these things put together. When you go to a park in China, it's bustling with people. You go to a park in Canada, there are no people. People don't want to hang out in a park, unless there's a special event going on. And so, I guess what I'm saying is the boredom of a small western city compared to the reality of life in China as a person living here and thriving here, I guess, too, because we do pretty good for ourselves in China. It's one of those things that simply amazes me. When you feel more at ease being around Chinese people than you do being around Western people. When you feel more at ease eating Chinese food than eating Western food. When you're more at ease when you're drinking Chinese alcohol rather than Western alcohol. Talking to Chinese people rather than Western people. Getting around in China is easier than getting around in the Western world. Jumping on an airplane going to Shanghai might cost a couple $100. Jumping on a train going to Hong Kong might cost you a couple hundred RMB, which is $40. And it used to be a 14-15 hour bus ride. Now it's a couple hours and you're in Hong Kong. Going downtown, well, that's 5 minutes on a subway. In Nanaimo, where I live now, or Prince Albert, where I used to live, you didn't have all of these amenities. So, life is more difficult in Canada than it is here. So, the simplicity of living in China sort of gets you, and it's pretty hard to go back to the old way of thinking and knowing that Canada is the old way. It doesn't have the infrastructure China does. It doesn't have the prices, the public transportation, the weather. The weather here is freaking awesome, man. I'm telling you, summer times are hot. Winter times aren't so cold. Today it's 13 degrees, but you see, because I'm used to really hot weather, I'm cold today. Yeah, I get cold when it hits anything under 20 degrees. Never having to worry about being pulled over by a police officer in China. And that's another thing. Whenever a cop in Canada gets behind me, I get an uneasy feeling in my stomach. Here, they won't pull you over. They don't want to talk to a Westerner. They don't want to have the hardship of trying to enforce the law on a Westerner, especially traffic laws. That said, those damn cameras got me 3 times in the first month, gave me 3 tickets in the first month I was driving in China. So, they have their ways of dealing with us too, I guess. First one, my fault. I went the wrong way down a one-way street. I didn't see the sign. Second time, I don't believe I was in the wrong, and they said that I crossed a white line into a bike lane. I wasn't given a fine, but they did take, I think, 1 demerit off my license. The third one was a speeding ticket on the highway, and a friend of mine took that for me, and I just had to pay I think it was 300 RMB fine, and then we talked to a police officer friend because I was supposed to do 3 hours of training, retraining, and he just wrote it down that I'd already done the 3 hours of training, so I didn't have to do that. It's watching the world change around you. High-rise buildings going up, overpasses being built in a matter of a couple of months, new apartment complexes being built in a year. Not only built in a year, but people are already moved in and living there after a year. And you look at the West and say, well, that's just not happening there. So I'm you know, I'm thinking that if I'm not in China, I'm going to miss something, because it happens, you know, everything happens here so quickly. And it's like my neighborhood is growing in China. I've lived on Hojilu now since 2007, so we're going on 11 years now. And before that, we were in Beihai, down in the South China Sea. I loved it there, but my wife didn't. So, and you know, she's a boss, and that's just the way it goes. But after being in China for so long, it's really, really hard to change back. So I'm lost in China, and I guess it's going to be like that for probably the rest of my life. I'm probably not going to be here all of my life, or maybe even not the majority, but I do know that every year for the next 20 years or so, I will be back in China, unless I get sick or something. And because I have family, I have friends in China, and I'm not willing to give that up. It's you know, I've invested lots of time and effort, you know, money too, buying a home here, and you know, becoming native in China. And that's another video from Gweilo 60. As always, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button. Thanks for watching. Bye now.